It's winter 1980. We're in the small town of Lengby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, the girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood, but no one knows for sure. These days, she has an ordinary job and almost doesn't remember that day. Further research on this topic can help scientists create special medicines that can help in freezing temperatures. Just imagine that you could safely go outside in the winter wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Steam would be coming off your body, and the ice under your feet would be melting. You'd feel hot inside. A dream, perhaps. But realistically, winter coat manufacturers would, of course, never allow it. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
We're so used to the things our body does to keep us alive each day that we barely ever think about the mechanisms of sleeping, talking, breathing, or even blinking. But what would happen to your body if you stopped doing each of these things all of a sudden? How long would it be before it became a problem? Not that I've ever considered taking some sort of vow of silence, but I do sometimes wonder what would happen if I just stopped talking altogether. Would I lose my voice forever at one point? Let's look at what specialists at Columbia University have to say. First of all, our vocal cords are muscles, so they do need a workout every now and then to stay in shape. If you stopped speaking, these muscles would start to get weaker after a while. As a result, your voice would become quieter, and its pitch would get higher. Even worse, this might make it sound hollow, and basically, it would be harder for you to speak overall. In a way, It's one of those situations where if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, kind of. Luckily, breathing and eating would enter into the equation here. These processes would keep your muscles in some shape. Plus, no matter how long you kept silent, it wouldn't do any permanent damage. And once you started using your vocal cords again, your voice would be back. We all know what might happen if we stopped washing. We'd smell. But let's look at it from a scientific point of view. How about an experiment where a person stops showering for a whole year? Depending on its type, a person's skin would initially become either extremely oily or very dry. The oiliest parts of their body, like behind the ears and the neck, would collect dust and pollutants and even change color. As for their head, it would get very itchy because of all that skin buildup. And after such a long time of not having a proper cleaning routine, it could take weeks to get the skin back to normal. It may sound like a vacation of sorts, but let's look at what would happen if you never got out of bed. One of the first organs to feel the change would be our lungs. Without gravity to pull them down into their standard position, their lower part would crease. But coughing every now and then would help to reduce this effect. Going further, you'd start to lose about 1% of your bone density with each passing week. This would make your bones more fragile. By the way, it's also the reason why astronauts, who can go for months without experiencing gravity, need to move around for at least 2 hours a day and make sure they have enough calcium in their diet. That same 1% would also apply to your muscle mass. You'd first start to see the effects of this lack of movement in your thighs and shoulders. The unused sugars that previously went to the muscles would start to build up in the blood system after about 10 days. After a whole month in bed, your heart would end up pumping 30% less blood with each beat. There would be less oxygen in your body, and you'd feel even more tired, which sounds kind of surprising. After all, you'd spend the entire month in bed. What would happen if you held your breath for too long? Let's have a look at the timeline. Firstly, the oxygen levels in your brain would decrease, followed by a higher level of carbon dioxide. Usually your body gets rid of this gas pretty fast when you breathe out. After about 60 seconds, the cells in your body would start to behave differently than they normally do. All body parts would be affected by the sudden change. Your heart would start to beat irregularly. If you didn't begin to breathe even at this point, you'd most likely end up fainting. Similar to so many other mammals, we humans have a diving response. This is a built-in automated mechanism that you come equipped with. It makes sure that your brain always has enough oxygen, even in an emergency situation. This diving response starts working extra hard every time your face ends up in the water, but it can happen on dry land as well. Its main aim is to make sure your brain continues functioning, no matter the cost. So, it orders your body to redirect all the blood from non-essential body parts, like legs or arms, to the brain. Now, what would happen if you stopped blinking? Or if you didn't blink frequently enough? Firstly, your corneas would likely increase in size. The cornea is the only part of your body that doesn't have a blood supply, but it still needs oxygen to function properly, and it gets it straight from the air. By the way, that's the reason why your cornea swells up, just a bit, when you sleep, but it goes back to normal in the morning. Then, your eyes would probably start to dry out because the tear film wouldn't get restored. What does this mean? Mostly some pain and blurry vision. Blinking also helps with removing all dirt and dust from your eyes. And if you stop moving your eyelids, things would most likely get stuck in your eyes and cause serious damage. We take chewing for granted, don't you think so? But come to think of it, it's the first stage of digestion. Chewing helps your stomach to process the food you eat more easily by breaking it into smaller parts. Chewing less, or not at all, should should you ever resort to a full liquid diet, might cause harm not only to your digestive system, but, surprisingly, to your jaw muscles as well. Without regular chewing movements, your facial features would change pretty soon. Chewing also lets your stomach know when it's time to increase its acidity so it can process food better. Your senses are a huge part of your day-to-day lives, and here's a neat trick that the human brain can do. When one sense is lost or damaged, another can become much more heightened. People with bad eyesight may be able to hear better, while those who have problems with their hearing might have some sort of enhanced vision. Recent research has shown that the brain can actually remodel itself, giving more power to other senses when one is damaged or missing. They notice this in microscopic roundworms. They have a peculiar behavior when they have a poor sense of touch. Then, their sense of smell becomes super sensitive, and they manage to seek out food sources with a very faint scent. Similarly, some visually impaired people have something in common with bats. Such people basically learn to use their boosted hearing to navigate the world more efficiently. They make a series of rapid clicking noises. This is just how bats use their built-in sonar to find their way when there's no light. Your brain is home to 86 billion neurons. It shouldn't come as a surprise that it also has some sort of a backup plan when some of its parts fail, right? But then there's another question. Why aren't our senses heightened from the very beginning? I mean, we're obviously born with this capability, so why don't we just activate it by default? The explanation is a bit complex. Mostly, it all comes down to your body's inability to work really hard for extended periods of time. To be more precise, your body is always looking to obtain and maintain a certain balance in order to function properly. When one sense is deprived, another needs to be sharper. More so, all these changes in our senses, depending on the circumstances, appear to be reversible. This yet again illustrates the human body's need to function in harmony.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Hey guys! So, I just learned about this cool new method to really get the most out of your life and to be your own boss. It's called, Sorry guys, just a second. Oh wow! Looks like my new video just went viral. All right, what was I saying? Oh yeah, right. So there's this new cool method to get the most out of your life. What? Huh. Looks like a new episode of my favorite show just came out. Might have to cancel my 5 o'clock workout just to watch it. Okay, sorry everyone. Now seriously, let me tell you about this cool new dopamine detox method. California psychiatrist Dr. Cameron Seppa is the inventor of this idea. Another name for it is dopamine fasting. According to Dr. Seppa himself, it's an evidence-based technique to manage addictive behaviors. The idea is to help stop compulsive behaviors and control the harmful stimuli that cause them. They can differ from person to person, social media, junk food, online shopping. Everyone's got a vice. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those on their own. Doing all those things is perfectly normal, as long as you don't let them take over your life. Dr. Seppa recommends dopamine detox only to those who feel that these habits negatively affect their personal life, health, or career. And you should only try it if other methods haven't worked out. So I keep saying dopamine, but what actually is it? It's a chemical in the brain associated with pleasure, reward, and motivation. For example, when you eat chocolate, your brain releases dopamine, so you feel happy and crave more and more, and more. It's the same with social media. You get your first 1,000 likes, you feel loved and appreciated, and start craving more and more of that attention. The brain remembers what triggered those positive emotions and makes you turn the activities into a habit. Over time, your brain learns to release dopamine even before you give it what it loves. You can arrive at the shopping mall and actually feel good and motivated before you actually start shopping. And that is how you get hooked to it. The anticipation of the reward. But hey, to be fair, dopamine isn't bad. It's also the reason why you develop healthy habits, like going to the gym, reading good books, or learning foreign languages. So it has more to do with motivation than simple pleasure. The idea behind dopamine detox is to exclude all of the unhealthy habits from your life altogether, all at once. You're supposed to learn to resist and live through your uncomfortable feelings like boredom or loneliness, instead of reaching out for a fast solution like scrolling through your phone or putting on some loud music in your headphones. Okay, so I do feel like there are some things that distract me and slow me down, like Netflix and social media. I guess I could be a lot more productive if I gave those up, at least for a week. Let's see how it goes. So, on the first day of my dopamine detox, I woke up and my hand automatically reached for my phone, but thankfully, I caught myself in the act and left the phone alone, because I'm detoxing, right? So instead, I immediately got up, took a shower, and ate breakfast. And this time I was careful about what I was eating for breakfast. I even tried out a new omelet recipe that I saw on Instagram long ago. On my way to work, I listened to an audiobook instead of music. I actually enjoyed that quite a lot. I also enjoyed working with no distractions for once. Let's be honest, who doesn't like to get their mind off of things at the office every now and then? You think you're just gonna scroll for 5 minutes, and before you know it, it's 1 hour later and you've got nothing done. So this time, I forced myself to be super productive. I think my boss will really appreciate this dopamine detox idea. After returning home, my first thought was to check out the new episode of my favorite show, but I decided against it, and thus ended up with some unexpected free time. So I went for a run without my phone. Did you know the sunset is actually orange and purple? What a beautiful view. I still had time before bed, so imagine this. I actually took a physical book off the shelf. It smelled so good. I read it for a little while and then fell asleep. On the second day of my detox, I woke up feeling refreshed. I guess it's because I didn't fall asleep with my phone in my hands after 2 hours of scrolling as I normally do. My brain was craving some dopamine and I was about to reward it with some chocolate, but then I realized that would be cheating. So I put the chocolate bar back into the fridge. Painful, I know. It was one of my days off, so I had to try a little harder than the previous day to spend the time. So I did my research. Yeah, I actually Googled what to do instead of social media. And I found a lot of things to choose from. Bike rides, hikes, yoga, meditation, kayaking, geocaching, exploring your own neighborhood, spending time with your friends or your pet, swimming, fishing, stargazing, camping, or taking a tour of your own city. Wow. It's amazing how none of those activities have ever crossed my mind before. So I decided to do a little exploring in my own neighborhood for the evening. Now I know that there's a lovely coffee shop in my area and a green market that sells some excellent tomatoes. I decided to spend day 3 with my friends. Of course, it was not easy getting them all together because not everyone was dopamine detoxing like me, but we still had a pretty good time. At one point, I mentioned my detox experiment, and they all admitted to each having their own habits that they wanted to get rid of. One of them said they couldn't survive a minute without some music playing on their headphones. Another said that they live on junk food, which had become a real problem. So I guess soon I'll be adding a few more to my detox team. The following day of the experiment was a Monday, so I had to go back to work. Believe it or not, I was actually enthusiastic about it. That weekend spent outside and talking to the people that I love charged up my batteries. Now, I have been honestly following the detox routine, I promise. So I haven't been keeping up on my social networks. And I gotta tell you, it felt so liberating. I did feel a little bit uneasy when I realized that I'd be missing the new episodes of that show that I like so much. But then I discovered that real life can be just as entertaining, if not more. Day 5 and 6 of my experiment went pretty well too. I no longer felt the urge to scroll through everyone's updates right in before bed. Of course, I still use the internet at work, so I wasn't completely off the grid. Evening walks had become part of my daily routine, and I do intend to keep going on them after the detox as well. Well, today is the final day of my experiment. And I gotta say, living without social media actually turned out easier than I thought. But I guess it can be different for different people. A friend of mine who's tried it too said that she felt lonely and scared when she went off the grid. That makes sense. Humans are social beings, and for many of us, limited social stimulation is a big red flag for the nervous system. So I guess the safest you can go is not to cut off dopamine altogether for a whole week and then jump right back in, but instead to cut it off in smaller intervals, like let's say a couple hours every day or one day out of the weekend. And since we now know dopamine can be good sometimes, and you actually do need it in your system, there is one magical detox method that works all the time. It's called a vacation. I don't know about you, but I'm going to take a look at some travel plans soon. As always, the key is moderation. Take care of yourselves.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.